Thank you guys for coming today. I know there was a little bit of a bait and switch. I guess Sean was the name printed on the menu. I'm not as good looking as Sean, so please bear with me for the next 20 or so minutes. I'm Dylan. I'm one of the co-founders of Commonwealth Labs. I'm here today to talk about Edgeware. What Edgeware is, I'll get to in a little second, but Commonwealth Labs, we're a distributed team, mostly centered around New York. We have people in San Francisco, here, Israel, Detroit, some people in Europe as well. And so we want to mirror the structure of the underlying industry that we work in. And the thing that we focus on at Commonwealth Labs is governance and governing the commons. And blockchains are one example of those commons. And so what Edgeware is, well, here's a little bit of a joke. But Edgeware is a little district in northern London. I think it's like, the dude who directed Notting Hill, this is rumored to be the next location, so you can look out for that. But for our purposes, what Edgeware is it's Polkadot's smart contract platform. And so that comes with a few things. As Aidan mentioned before, it comes with a set of modular components that makes it dev-friendly. It comes with what we build on top, a token distribution and a community that we kind of have built as well. And then the governance structure in which we help run Edgeware. And we get the scalability and security of Polkadot itself. And so I'll be going a little more in depth into each part of that. So dev-friendly WASM smart contract. So Lane, the gentleman sitting up here in front, he is also from Penn. He's been working on the eWASM team. And so what WASM is instead of building with the EVM or compiling down to the EVM and bytecode there, what you do is you compile down to WebAssembly, all right? And so what that means is you can build in languages other than Solidity or something else. Instead, you can build directly in languages that we're all comfortable with. Rust, C, C++, TypeScript, whatever the broader community of WebAssembly developers kind of come up with. And so our chain itself, you can actually build smart contracts in Rust right now. And so the reason for this is that, as we talked about, the larger vision of Commonwealth, the larger vision of blockchains in general is not just to build for a small community, not just this room. As Aidan mentioned before, we want to build for people who might not just be so in love with the technology and just want to focus on the use cases. And so building the languages and building support for that is a really important thing. And beyond that, it's making sure that the underlying stack is modular and extensible. So you can continue to rely on the same underlying technology without worrying of it shifting and changing. And so I won't rehash the things that Aidan mentioned or would have kind of been talked on the stack. So we're built on Substrate itself. And so we announced the Edgeware project at Web3 Summit last year. And so that was around September last year? October. All right. It's moved up a little bit this year, so definitely get your tickets. And so it's been a really quick turnaround, essentially. So from the October Web3 Summit, we essentially started building the project. We built the set of modular components, the governance components that we wanted. We launched a testnet. We've had 3 testnets since. And we are also on telemetry, which I'll show you in a second. And the things that we want to build for the Substrate community that any chain or any pair chain can kind of plug into are voting modules, so you can do one person, one vote type of things, UIs to make sure this whole governance process happens smoothly, and a set of social norms as well as identity modules. So you can link an Ethereum address or an Edgeware address or whatever address that you might have to a social identity. So a Twitter account or a Telegram account or something like that. So you can actually see who's participating in these discussions and in these governance conversations. And by looking at that, we should hopefully be able to see who's participating in these conversations, as I mentioned before, but hopefully maintain a kind of, not even a veneer, but like a foundation of trust instead of this tribalism that we might have now. And so the larger kind of vision for these things is making sure that these commons actually work well. And so we're kind of at a limited scale in terms of the applications that we kind of reach. And so these projects like blockchains themselves, they reach across the globe from the developer set, but can we actually evolve these chains? Can we evolve these commons into a way that actually might be more compelling than a centralized company? It's kind of a broad vision, and maybe we can talk about it a little later, but something that can reach the scale of a Google or a Facebook and be as effective and hopefully still be as open. And so that's kind of the three facets of being developer friendly that we hope to. We don't want developers to fall prey to platform risk, something that we might know from the Web 2 framework. And so to make sure that this community actually runs well, we have a fairer token distribution. And so what we mean by that is we're doing this thing called the lock drop, which is essentially pretty novel, I would say. And so this lock drop, what happens is we're giving away 90% of tokens. So 10% will be allocated to initial contributors to the project, but 90% of tokens are being given away in this lock drop, where all you have to do is time lock your ETH, and you get edge tokens. You also get your ETH back. And that's very, very important. And so we want everyone to participate. Anyone who functions in a smart contract platform, whether they be validators, people who also guarantee the economic security of a proof-of-stake chain, core developers, dApp developers, and end users, anyone can participate and grab their edge tokens in this process. And that's all happening June 1st. And so here's a little bit of information on essentially what the kind of like schedule for participation. So there's different options for individuals to participate on Edgeware. So you can lock or you can signal. And so when you signal, you don't have any opportunity cost of participating. Anyone can essentially sign a carbon vote style transaction, and they'll be allocated some portion, a deduction of the initial Ethereum that they actually put in to the contract, so to speak. And for the rest of the options, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, you get essentially an additional bonus for foregoing the opportunity cost. And so for 3 months, that's like kind of the baseline. And so you'll receive just the face value of the ETH that you kind of locked in terms of edge. And for 6 months, you essentially get a 5% per month bonus. So 1.3 minus 1 divided by 6, you get 5%. And then 12 months, you should get a 10% bonus per month, essentially. And so essentially, the Edgeware that you receive allows you to participate in the network in any capacity right at launch. So you can validate on the network, you can spin up different smart contracts, you can participate in the governance process, you can vote on different allocations of further inflation, all right at launch. And so this is a process that's actually happening, it's all starting June 1st. And so we've already launched the contracts to run this Edgeware lock drop. And so there's no stopping the show now, essentially. And so it's running from June 1st to August 30th. And then right then is when the chain will actually be launched. So anyone can pull the events essentially from Ethereum, and they can spin up their own Edgeware chain, and they can start using it right away on September 1st, essentially. And so, as I talked about before, these are the people that we hope are interested in Edgeware. So core network developers who have a new network to play around with, largely ETH developers who have already participated, stakers and validators who are participating in other networks, so people like Bison Trails, other folks within the industry, they've already kind of signed on to participate on the Edgeware network. Governance developers who are experimenting with helping governing the commons, and as well as decentralized app developers. So people who want to run applications on different networks, including Ethereum, Polkadot, and Cosmos as well. And so by having this whole broad set of stakeholders, we have a community-owned network. And so how do we make sure that everyone actually is on the same page if there are multiple stakeholder voices? It's a really great question. And so one of the core features of Edgeware is that we actually are using modules built by Parity to help govern the whole network itself. And so the council module and the democracy module are built by Parity themselves. And then signaling is another module that we built on top of that. So instead of worrying about the network layer stuff that Aidan mentioned before, or the consensus mechanism, these are the things that we focused on. building robust governance mechanisms. And so to dive into what governance looks like, the council is the core. And so you have a set of peer-weighted individuals who are voted in by token weight. So once you claim your Edgeworth token, you can vote for one of 6 members on the council. What the council does is they bias, essentially, the quorum. So when the whole group of participants, anyone who holds Edgeworth token, using the democracy module, they will actually vote on a proposal. So it could be a core network upgrade. It could be an allocation of Edgeworth tokens from the treasury itself. And that'll have a binding on-chain change once the vote actually is processed. And around that is signaling. So these are non-binding proposals that essentially you can still track on-chain. So you can submit a proposal, but it won't have a binding change, and you can kind of poll the community to see the temperature, essentially. And that all happens through an hopefully easy-to-use multi-chain interface. So these are actually old screenshots. If you're at Token Summit, we're also talking there, and you can see kind of updated stuff. So what you should see here is kind of a news feed. This is a proposal. This is like something that's open for voting. Bless you. And you should be able to vote yes or no. It should be super easy and intuitive. And that's what we hope chain governance, commons governance, should look like. And this is something that we hope to replicate or essentially have across multiple different chains. And all this is done, one of the things actually to help, one of the set of decisions to make on the network is an allocation of a treasury. So as we know now, different networks have some set or amount of inflation per year. And so on Edgeware, what we do, instead of just allocating that bit of token to validators or stakers, we actually have 50% of that set away to be allocated to a treasury. And so in the first year, this inflation is 20% of the whole network, 16% in the second year, and it'll drop accordingly. Obviously, that's all changeable by the governance mechanism itself. But in the first year, if all goes according to plan and no changes are made by governance, 50% of the block reward will be allocated from this treasury. And so this token should be voted on by governance, by the democracy module, by the council itself, to incentivize the different individuals on the network. And so it hopefully should work like a DAO. And I don't want to get too mean. I was going to say 2019 is the year of the DAO, haha, whatever. Anyone can participate in this as long as they have Edgeworth tokens. They can even voice their opinions if they don't have Edgeworth tokens on the platform, the user interface that I kind of demonstrated before. Here's a close-up of one of the proposals. And so this would be something alongside treasury proposals. This is something that actually has a core network change. So instead of having transaction fees cost a certain amount, we could potentially reduce that. And so with that, as you can see right here, the different kind of usernames, those are tagged and attested to using the identity module. And so you shouldn't feel like you're actually playing with a blockchain itself. It should just feel like a normal web application. And one of the biggest problems, to zoom out a little bit within blockchain governance or governing commons, is how do we actually allocate voting rights proportionally, or what is kind of fair to govern one of these networks? And a big word within the space right now is plutocracy. Yeah, it's a big word. So the few things that we mentioned before, actually, I haven't dove into it. So quorum biasing is the thing that the council does. So the council votes as a set of peers. And so what they do is if everyone votes in the affirmative, if all 6 people vote yes, then the supermajority required is lessened. Tagging your identity using the identity module we built allows you to hopefully have kind of human-to-human conversation instead of hiding behind some type of identity. Of course, this identity process is optional, right? So you can still remain anonymous or pseudo-anonymous behind an address. And lastly, to kind of incentivize people to to balance out the token-weighted voting mechanism that we have now, we have this concept of lock duration voting. So what this is you can lock your vote kind of like you do within the lock drop itself. So you can lock it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 6 weeks. And you should be able to have more power if you lock for longer. Again, it's opportunity cost of voting with your Edgeware tokens and using it in another way on the network. All this is done in the name of preventing plutocracy. And we've had a few people sign up already within the network itself. So as Aidan mentioned before, we hope that blockchains themselves are kind of non-zero sum, and as commons kind of should be. And so the initial set of contributors, or I guess like Edgeware participants, are from our set of investors that we have into Commonwealth Labs, as well as early ETH projects. So projects like Aragon, Gnosis, Status, and other projects building on Parity, on Polkadot should be participating in this process, as well as the set of everyone in this room who holds ETH. We definitely want them to participate in this network. And lastly, scalability and security from Polkadot. Again, so one of the reasons why we were drawn to building on Polkadot itself was the fact that we didn't have to worry about all the underlying infrastructure. We wanted to just focus on the things that we felt were really important to solve, to bring blockchains to kind of fruition. And that was not worrying about scalability and security. So what Edgeware is a parachain itself. And so you can build smart contracts without having to build different modules. And so we're kind of a playground within the parachain ecosystem. So what Aidan mentioned before is allowing you to build modules that you might have different, there's a set of technical trade-offs that are necessary to be made if you're building gas transactions, or transactions that take gas versus gasless transactions, something that you use with modules, essentially. And so we can be a kind of playground within the Polkadot ecosystem to allow you to build those gas transactions that cost gas before jumping in and actually building a whole parachain itself. And so since we hook in directly to the Polkadot ecosystem, you're able to transact across these different chains themselves using the inter-blockchain communication, like value transfer mechanisms that Polkadot have already built in. And as I mentioned before, the lock drop is happening very, very soon. So I guess it's 2 weeks away now. You can get updates. You can stay updated with the kind of community that we have built. There's around 2,500 people active in our Telegram groups, our Discord communities, and on the user interface, which is launching very soon. You can get in touch with us at founders.commonwealth.im, or you can follow us on Twitter, the easiest way to get involved as well. So I went through that pretty quickly, so I'm happy to answer any questions now. Yeah?
By lock drop, is it all going to one big smart contract?
One big pot.
That seems kind of scary.
Yeah. No, it is not. So to talk about the lock drop and the lock drop contracts a little bit more, so they've already been audited by QuantStamp. And so you can view the audit report and all the information on our blog, and as well as Medium. And so the way the lock drop contracts work are, what you do, there's a factory contract, which essentially like creates its own little time lock and essentially sets each pool of funds, each individual's funds, in its own special smart contract. And that smart contract itself is very, very simple. It's essentially just a time lock. It's not a multi-sig. It's not anything that has an ERC20. It's only essentially 20 lines of opcodes. And so it should be extremely safe. And that's the hope. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you just briefly explain the difference between Commonwealth Labs and Parity and Edgeware?
The relationship.
To kind of piece things together?
Definitely, yeah. So Commonwealth Labs is a entity here in the States, and so the project that we have in common essentially is Edgeware, And so Web3 Foundation is also, again, I also don't want to speak for too much, but Web3 Foundation is a Swiss foundation, and I believe Parity is like GmbH in Germany. And so these are just like separate entities working or like working on the same common code base, essentially, Substrate. And that's the thing that we built. And so Substrate itself is governed by open source like software licenses, and that's really the relationship, between the entities. No, it's very exciting. Cool. Should I stop there? I guess I did. No, don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you, guys.